We figured we were the best trained outfit in the Army. A few days before we landed, they told us we were going to Italy for the first crack at the mainland. About the same time, we heard that Italy had surrendered. Looked like we weren't going to see any action after all. Not much, anyway. On the 9th of September in 1943, we landed at Salerno. We didn't have the usual naval bombardment to soften the enemy. The operation was supposed to be a surprise. We were the ones that were surprised. The first assault waves got ashore all right while it was still dark. Then the Germans began to let us have it. We were all set to blast us off the beach. Between their artillery in the hills and their planes overhead, they almost succeeded. While the engineers struggled to clear the beaches of mines and obstacles, we began to push inland. The Germans were waiting for us with machine guns and mortars. We finally got some artillery ashore, and that helped a lot. We started moving forward again. Then the Germans attacked with their tanks. We had to fight them with infantry weapons until we got our tank destroyers ashore. And with the help of the naval guns and artillery, we finally drove them off. We began pushing inland. Now began the bloody fighting for the hills around the beaches. We took them one by one. Hill 140. Hill 386. The fight for Hill 424 was a tough one. We took it and lost it. The Germans attacked with their tanks again. They were trying to split our forces, and they almost succeeded. The Navy moved in closer and began using their big guns. We got the air support we needed so badly. Finally, we even got reinforcements. They flew in some airborne infantry. German attack was broken up. The fighting went on. In less than a week, the paratroopers in a bloody fight had retaken Hill 424 in Altavilla. We had control of the area around Salerno. The Germans began to pull back, and the division went into reserve. It was winter before we went into the line again, this time near Mignano, to relieve the 3rd. It was raining and cold when we moved up. The German winter line stretched in front of us, blocking our advance to the north. Our job was to break through. To do this, we had to drive them from their fortified defensive positions in the hills. There were 3 of them. With the help of the largest concentration of artillery since El Alamein, we took the first one, Mount Camino Maggiore. We had to fight to take it. We had to fight harder to hold it. Mount Sammucro, Hill 1205, was our second objective. It was higher and better fortified. We had a tough time taking it. Mount Longo was the last German position blocking our way to the north. An Italian brigade had tried to take it and had been cut to pieces. We were more careful. We moved up the back slopes of Mount Longo under the cover of darkness and attacked at dawn. We surprised them and took the hill without a fight. After the fall of Mount Longo, the Germans gave up and began to withdraw. And San Pietro, the little town dominating the main highway to the north, was ours. Or what was left of it. battle wasn't over. The Germans were fighting bitterly to cover their withdrawal. Christmas 1944 found the 36th with some of its battalions reduced to less than company strength, still pushing after the enemy. The slow but steady advance to the north came to a halt at the entrance of the Leary Valley. The Germans had prepared a new line of defense along the Rapido River, and they were waiting for us. They didn't have long to wait. We attacked twice. And twice we were driven back. Quite a few of our men got across the Rapido, but not many came back. After the fight at the Rapido, what was left of the division was sent to San Elia in the north. Here the 36th crossed the river and in the freezing cold of mid-February took up defensive positions in the hills around Casino. We didn't have the troops to assault the key German strongholds on Mount Casino and Mount Cairo. We held on to what we had, beating off repeated attacks by the Germans. The Air Force tried to get the Germans off Mount Casino. The historic old Benedictine Abbey was destroyed. When it was all over, the Germans were still there. Near the end of February, with only a fraction of its fighting strength left, the 36th was relieved and sent back to Naples to rest up. 2 months later, after refitting and taking on replacements, the division sailed for Anzio to take part in the May offensive. The 36th was in reserve when the big push started to break out from the beachhead. They were committed when the advance of the Fifth Army had come to a halt before Velletri, the last German stronghold blocking the way to Rome. The 36th was brought up in order to take it. We did. One of the most brilliantly conceived and executed maneuvers of the entire Italian campaign. The attack became a mass infiltration by the division. Under the cover of darkness, we moved through the enemy lines and occupied a high ridge overlooking the town. The engineers put a road in, we brought our guns up. The Germans didn't discover us until the following morning. Then it was too late. They attacked. But we held. And the following day, our troops entered Velletri. The road to Rome was open. The Germans were pulling back and we were right on their heels. The Romans had already started celebrating their liberation when we entered the city. But we didn't stop. We kept right after the retreating Germans, fighting their rear guards. By the end of June, we had reached Piombino. It was the end of the line for us. The 36th was relieved again. We returned to Salerno to prepare for another assignment.
Spring 1944. This is where our winter offensive stopped. Peaceful-looking hills, aren't they? Something like the hills back home. But the countryside of Casino has helped the Germans build the toughest barrier we'd hit up to mid-May 1944. By mid-January 1944, we and our allies had cleared the enemy from the mountains east of Casino and had drawn up to the east side of the Rapido Valley. The Allies faced a river, minefields, and barbed wire, all covered by enfilading machine gun fire. The first attempted crossing north of Casino failed at the riverbank. The Nazis, in this deadly chess game, altered the course of the river, flooding the irrigation ditches, washing out roads, and turning the valley into a swamp. Finally, the tanks used the dry riverbed itself as a roof. This attack with protective cover carried successfully up to Mount Castellone and Hill 593. The southern attack from San Angelo had already been stopped at the Rapido. Our troops fought their way into town 3 times. The 4th time we stayed. We strained forward to inch up Abbey Hill, from which we could cut Highway 6 and take Casino from the rear. Whoever dominated the summits of the hills around Casino dominated the town and the roads leading in and out of it. Enemy observers in the monastery saw our every move the moment we made it. The artillery in the monastery and along the slopes prevented us from reaching the summit, even though we had established positions in the town itself. On February 9th, 75 yards from the Abbey, we were stopped. Here the lines remained for 2 months. The enemy still held the greater part of Casino and the Monte Cassino Abbey. It became a question of destroying a monument or sacrificing our men. There was actually no question. The troops were withdrawn 1,000 yards. A leaflet was prepared to warn the civilian population to evacuate. Right behind the front lines, they were packed into thin-skinned shells. On impact, the shell would split open. And now, carefully concealed, camouflaged 105 howitzers on gun carriages opened up with a bombardment of warning. 9:28 a.m., February 18th. A-20s were airborne. 226 bombers took part in the attack. Wave after wave of B-25s and later B-17s, B-24s, B-26s planted more than 500 tons of bombs in 4 hours. Between waves, our heavy artillery took up the bombardment. Bombardment, the stalemate still existed. The Germans filtered back into their positions on Mount Cassino, reinforced their strongholds in the town. Over Route 6 and through tunnels from the Ducal Palace, supplies streamed into the Nazi Green Devil Parachute Division, clinging to the amphitheater, the Colosseum, the Ducal Palace, the railroad station, the Hotel des Roses, the Yellow House, the Continental Hotel, Castle Hill, and Hill 165. These points were ordered to resist to the last man. Against the menace of the Nazi heights, we held Mount Trocchio. By Trocchio and on Mount Castellone and all along our line, we placed the most massive concentration of artillery pieces of the Italian campaign. From the smallest mortars and howitzers on the border of no man's land to 155 long toms and 240 howitzers in the rear, we were ready to begin the third and fiercest attack. The rear of our lines was a beehive of activity. Troops and M4 Shermans moved up, and at every airfield in the Italian theater, planes were being ready to wipe a city off the map. .155 long toms were dragged by M4 prime movers into their positions. The positions were carefully chosen to keep down the chance of detection by enemy air or ground observation. The crews were ready, eager. This was the kind of show they had trained for. Training that blended these guns completely with landscape. And at last, the 240 howitzer, emplaced with the help of a crane, and a prime mover improvised out of an obsolete Sherman tank. Emplacing one of these giants was a specialist job, and every man of the 32 in this section knew each move he had to make, from establishing the line of fire before the howitzer was mounted to inspecting it after the operations were finished. Finally, additional sound plots. With poor visibility, this equipment would be invaluable. The location of each microphone was carefully selected for the best reaction. After that, the line was checked by phone. It checked, so the cylinder was connected and enclosed in a watertight bag. One of the men tested it for sound. It was suspended and finally concealed under a loose layer of dirt. Now, should an enemy gun fire, the microphones would pick up the sound. It would be recorded on film either at a special laboratory or at the command post. The time intervals would be called off to the computer, relayed to the plotting table, and translated into distances. The plotters would then locate the positions of the enemy guns, check them on a terrain map, and phone in the grid numbers to battalion headquarters. And so even if the enemy gun flash were obscured, we'd be able to return his fire within 5 yards of his emplacement. 0830, March 15th. Again, we took to the air. First, the mediums. They came from Sardinia, Corsica, everywhere. The heavies of the Strategic Air Force, B-24s, B-17s. 1,400 tons in 4.5 hours. But nothing was finished. When we stormed what was left of the town, we found that rubble made good concealment for the enemy. Debris made good roadblocks against our tanks. The Nazis' return fire was as strong as ever. We were stopped. But in staff headquarters, new plans of action were on the fire. We will move ahead. We are moving ahead, past Casino and into the heart of the fortress Europe.
Casino, crushed by the Allied war machine, lies in ruins. The retreating Germans left mines and booby traps to hinder our advance. And though some of our tanks were casualties in the terrific battle, the Nazis have been driven far beyond the shattered walls of Monte Cassino. Commanding officers of British, American, and French armies, including Generals Alexander and Truscott, and the leader of the American Fifth, General Mark Clark, plan the drive on Rome. Thousands of German prisoners are taken as the Allied forces reach height within sight of the Italian capital. These are Signal Corps pictures. A German secret weapon, the Death Wagon, captured on the Italian front. This radio-controlled tank is designed to deliver 1,000 pounds of explosives. Another of Adolf's surprises, a human torpedo was driven ashore near Anzio. Its one-man crew, a 17-year-old Kriegsmarine, a 6 months veteran, is proud and defiant. Who's not what makes the suicide craft tick? Another German miracle plan that didn't come off.